We're going to dive into what's going on in the BitMEX saga. So the last of the 4 accused executives from BitMEX to remain at large amid money laundering charges has apparently agreed to be extradited from Bermuda to the US. It is Gregory Dwyer, who is BitMEX's head of business operations. Last year, you'll recall, the federal prosecutors in New York accused 4 BitMEX executive of willfully failing to establish, implement, and maintaining an adequate anti-money laundering program, including an adequate customer identification program. As we know, this is not actually an exchange based in the US to comply with these laws. It is based in Seychelles. So we can dive into that later. I definitely have some thoughts on that and on anti-money laundering regulations in general. But let's throw it to the group. Will, what are your thoughts on all of this?
I guess at a high level, my thought is like, this is what's just going to happen. Like the long arm of the US law isn't going to stop reaching for you. Like it's going to find you wherever you are. The US that's what they do. There's extradition treaties with most countries, minus a few ones like China. And if you're choosing to live somewhere where there is an extradition treaty, you're probably going to be snagged one way or the other. It's also really uncomfortable to work in tech industry and not have connections to the US. So I think like going forward, I'd be interested to see what Binance and the FTXs of the world are going to do looking at this BitMEX picture. And the US succeeded in getting 4 of these executives to either like surrender or come to the US and start working towards settlements and probably trials later at some point. So, you know, for the FTXs of the world and the Binances of the world, they often say like, we have no connection, but a lot of US users are using these platforms. So what is their plan in the grand scheme of things? I think crypto users in the US want to see laws change, but with Gary Gensler and others in the SEC office, I don't think that is what's going to happen over the next few years. So it really is just a battle of incentives here. And for those who are kind of leading the charge on the tech side of things, they are often the ones who have to bear the brunt of enforcement actions. Zach, I want to get your thoughts on this, though.
Yeah, I mean, just the BitMEX saga continues to unfold a little bit anticlimactically, maybe. I mean, I think some people were expecting Arthur Hayes to kind of just be, you know, just out there in front of this thing the whole time, sort of wagging his finger at U.S. Regulators, but that really hasn't been the case. And I think, you know, Will's point is apt, right? It may take time, but yes, the long arm of the U.S. law will find you, and that is what we're seeing play out here in dribs and drabs. So, yeah, this is a story. It's going to be interesting to see what the next BitMEX is 3 years from now, and whether or not this same playbook will be employed. But I'll toss it to you guys tied. Jen and Naomi tied with the hand raised.
You take it.
Are we going to rock, paper, scissors?
Yeah, so let's do rock, paper, scissors.
All right. Well, every time I read about BitMEX, it just reminds me that the fall from the top is a hard one, especially in this space. I know yesterday we spoke about the need for regulatory clarity because this opacity is what leads to these really tragic stories like BitMEX. And to Will's point, like who's going to be the next BitMEX in the next 3 years? And I don't think we're going to get that clarity. So every time I read about BitMEX, it's just like a reminder that this could happen to anyone.
So just to kind of wrap up, I do have some strong words to say about anti-money laundering regulation. So Richard Rahn summed it up pretty well in a column for Washington Times. He called anti-money laundering regulations a modern version of prohibition, well-meaning in theory, but counterproductive in practice. And they fit under this definition of a vague law because unlike murder or robbery, it is not a crime of an act, but one of an intent. And this leads to a huge amount of abuse. It leads to people being targeted, arbitrarily. They can pick and choose which ones they want to target and then make guesses about their intent. On top of that, there have been all kinds of studies that show that it's completely ineffective. So there have been lots of studies, like FIA has written extensively about this, how AML laws result in huge, huge costs, but no evidence that criminals and terrorists are being stopped. And, the banks and other financial institutions, they're squandering all of this money and forcing to spy on all of their users. It's just a ridiculous situation, which I feel feel very strongly about. And then on top of that, you have the US going after an exchange that wasn't even based in the US to comply with US laws. And you have people being extradited to the US, which is, I mean, it just seems like a complete farcical situation. You know, when are we just going to start, you know, considering the president of the US like king of the world, considering that they seem to be making the decisions for every sovereign jurisdiction in that world?